Hello. So in this video, we're going to talk about the classical structure of argument. Now, this is a form of argument, a way of constructing arguments that has a very, very long history. The foundations of this go back to the Greeks, but it was really the Romans like Cicero and Quintilian, the great sort of Roman orators, Roman rhetoricians, who give this its final form. So basically, this is an approach to organizing information in an argument in order to be most effective. And this is really designed for making speeches in the Roman Senate or the Forum or wherever it was, but this still works today for written texts as well as speeches. So basically, there's seven key components to the classical structure of argument. You start with the Exordium. You'll forgive my bad Latin, by the way, but the Exordium is essentially the attention grabber. It's what you would do to hook the reader's interest or hook the listener's interest and make them actually want to pay attention. So this could be something like a rhetorical question. This could be something like an engaging anecdote. This could be something like a challenge to a commonly held idea or belief. Something that's going to get listeners or readers to say, I'm engaged by this. So that's followed up by Narratio. Narratio is basically the background or the context to whatever it is you're going to be talking about. Oftentimes this will involve what is the problem that you're going to be addressing? What's the situation? And this is a way of also starting to set the stakes. Here's why you, the listener, should be interested in what I am saying. Here's how this impacts you or why this is important for you to know. The next phase is the Propositio, which is the central argument, what we would today call the thesis. So this is the main thing that you want listeners or readers to understand and to take away from this speech or this essay or whatever it is. Propositio, it should be a strong statement of claim, your strong central argument. Again, it's a thesis. I've done videos on the thesis before. You want to be doing all of those things at this stage. This is followed by Partitio, which is basically a preview of the organization of the text. This was much more important in the days of oration, where people were speaking. It mattered really to say, this is what I'm going to start by telling you, then I'm going to tell you this, then I'm going to tell you this, then I'm going to conclude this. That was really important because when listeners have to gather information just by hearing something, they need more scaffolding than readers need, because readers can go back and reread something. So if I've missed a point that you've made earlier in an essay or a book or something like this, I can go back to it and I can reread it. When I'm listening to a speech, I can't do that. I get one shot at it. And so Partitio is really important for spoken presentations because listeners can't go back. So they need to know, here's what's coming, so that they can sort of make sense of where we currently are in the speech. So that might broadly be considered the sort of introductory material. The Exordium, Narratio, Propositio, and Partitio. These are the things that prepare us for what the speech is actually trying to show. Then you have the Confirmatio. And this is probably the longest section in most speeches because this would be where you present the evidence for your argument. So you develop your specific ideas, you present evidence, you interpret that evidence, you draw connections between ideas, you explain how all of the stuff that you're saying supports the central claim of your speech or your essay or whatever it is. Confirmatio would be the meat of this document, where most of your argument is developed. Then you have confutatio. This is the refutation, the rebuttal or counter-argument. Oftentimes in the classical tradition, because you would have rhetorical debates in which two or more speakers would be speaking about a particular topic, this might be a direct rebuttal. Cicero says this, but here is why I disagree. Quintilian put forward this point, but here is where his point falls short. Something like this, direct response to the other speaker. Nowadays, because we're less often in a sort of one-on-one rhetorical confrontation, you're more likely to address general points. Other people might see this as a problem, but here's why I don't think it is a problem. Or some people might propose adopting this solution rather than mine, but here's what's wrong with that solution. So this is, in this case, a more general response, a counter-argument or rebuttal. Again, identifying something that someone else might believe, a point that someone else might hold, and explaining why you don't agree with it, why you don't support that idea. And then finally, the peroratio. This is the conclusion to the speech or the essay, and it's supposed to do a couple of key things. So one is to sum up the argument that you've made. Again, this is a very important thing for listening audiences. Isn't necessarily as crucial for readers always, especially with shorter essays. But with listening audiences, such as to Roman orators, you want to sum up what you have said because that's going to reinforce it in their minds. So a summation, typically a call to action. Now that I have convinced you of what I was trying to convince you of, go forth and do whatever it is I want you to go forth and do. And then a final sort of strong closing, something to leave a good impression on listeners. So these are the components of the classical structure: Exordium, Narratio, Propositio, Partitio, Confirmatio, Confutatio, and Peroratio. You move through these elements in a speech, and in theory, you will construct a solid speech. Now, obviously, there's other components to this, such as avoiding logical fallacies, making sure that your making sure that your evidence is reliable, all that kind of stuff. But structurally, this is a very, very well-established way of building an argument. And if you are clever, you may have noticed that this is essentially still the way that we, in academia, for instance, tend to write essays today. I've taught first-year composition for over a decade at this point, almost a decade and a half. This is standard stuff, actually. We don't necessarily use the Latin terminology today when we're teaching this, but the basic structure of open with an attention grabber, give us background, present your thesis, maybe include a roadmap, give us the body of the essay, incorporate a counter-argument, and then develop a closing where you sum up your ideas and leave us with a call to action. That is a basic structure that we still use today. You could go to library databases, scholarly journals, anything like this, any place that scholars, that academics are publishing stuff, even often to places like the New Yorker, the New York Times, maybe not New York Times so much, the New Yorker, the Atlantic, these kinds of places that publish these fairly solid and substantive arguments, you're often going to find this classical structure of argument. It's been around for thousands of years, and we still use it today because it's super effective for building a good, solid argument.